For more insight, I'd like to bring in legal analyst and criminal trial attorney Misty Marris. Misty, thank you for weighing in on this. Really appreciate it. So the obvious question here, what does the now president-elect's victory mean for these legal cases, both pending, those in which he's already been convicted, both criminal and civil?
Yes, Nichole, so much to unpack. And Laura hit the nail on the head with some of the issues. So there's a threshold question here, though. And it's that a sitting president has a broad immunity against prosecution. And that's because there's an understanding that the national interest of being the president of the United States and answering to the people outweighs the necessity of those prosecutions while they're a sitting president. But the threshold question here is going to be whether or not any of those protections actually extend to a president-elect. Because we're in such an unprecedented territory from a legal perspective, that's going to be the first question that will be asked. And that goes to the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel, who could potentially weigh in on that as a threshold issue just to begin with. But beyond that, there's other issues with any of these cases moving forward now that Donald Trump has been elected, and each one has a unique set of circumstances that make them basically the reasons are different for why it's unlikely to see any of these cases actually come to fruition.
Well, you know, Donald Trump vowed to fire special counsel Jack Smith, quote, within 2 seconds of inauguration. What does that mean for the cases that he has been building against him?
Right. So as far as Jack Smith is concerned, once Donald Trump is the president of the United States, so meaning after his inauguration, which is like 76 days from now, he will have the ability in his position to fire Jack Smith. What Jack Smith needs to do in that interim, he could continue to pursue the federal cases. That's the Florida confidential documents case, as well as the DC case relating to January 6th. He could continue to pursue those. And ultimately, what he would need to do is when he transitions out, he'd prepare a report. Then it would be up to the Justice Department and the Attorney General whether to pursue the cases. Well, Nichole, Donald Trump will be president of the United States. He's going to have the ability for his, whoever he installs as attorney general, to scrap those cases and dismiss them. So it is very, very, it's almost impossible for those cases to move forward once he becomes president. So Jack Smith now can pursue them up to that point. But procedurally, remember, the Florida case has actually been dismissed. That decision is on, the prosecutors have contested it. So it's in the appellate stages, whether or not that will be overturned. That's not going to happen anytime soon. The January 6th case in DC is currently at a standstill. Jack Smith has made the argument of what acts fall outside of the presidential immunity Supreme Court decision. The defense still has to weigh in on that and provide their submission in response. So these cases are just not in a procedural point on the federal level where they're going to go anywhere before Inauguration Day.
I do want to ask you about the New York case. You had Laura Ingle there reporting. New York State Attorney General Letitia James is supposed to be speaking about the status of the hush money case. What do you think we'll hear from her later? I mean, it's supposed to be happening really at any moment.
Yeah, so the hush money case is actually the one that is a bit more complicated because there was a conviction. And right now we're waiting to see what will happen at that November 26th sentencing hearing. But Trump's lawyers are going to make the argument that a sentencing hearing cannot happen while he is the president-elect. And that's going to be their position, basically adding an additional argument for delay of that proceeding that they didn't have before. And Nichole, there's another aspect of the New York case where Trump was convicted that's still at issue. There is a motion pending before the judge asking for dismissal of the case based upon the presidential immunity case, which is the Supreme Court case, right? But this asks the judge to say whether or not there was evidence that was submitted to that courtroom that warrants overturning of that verdict because that evidence would fall under what was immune, or at least there's a question about whether it does. So that decision is coming November 12th. Okay. So if the judge says that, no, he's not going to throw out the verdict stands, then we're talking about the sentencing hearing, and we're talking about a whole slew of arguments from Donald Trump's legal team that would say, you can't have the president-elect facing a sentence by a state level court. that itself could lead to a bunch of appeals that are going to bring us farther than 76 days. So I think we're going to see a delay on that one too.
Misty, is there any way any of these cases could come back to haunt Mr. Trump in 4 years when he would no longer be in office?
So the federal cases, unlikely, because he's going to have a lot of control over those once he is in the seat as the president. The state level cases, yes, there's the possibility that any sentencing proceeding or any further action on those cases can be punted. We've got don't forget the Georgia RICO case, which is in legal no man's land right now, nowhere near going to trial. But certainly that could be resurrected later after he serves his term as president, his 4-year term. That being said, once you get out into years and years and years from now, is it really practical for those prosecutions to be picked up at that point and move forward just from a prosecutorial discretion standpoint? So answer is sure, it's possible, but is it practical? Probably not.
Possible, but not likely. All right. Trial attorney, legal analyst, Misty Marris, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Nichole.